Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today we're making Kabuli Pulao. This is Afghan rice with carrots and raisins. The Silk Road Gourmet by Laura Kelly has been such a tremendous resource for our family. We're going to be making the Afghan char masala, and this will be the spices we use for the rice. I have a grinder that I only use for spices, and we're going to add 1 tablespoon of cumin seeds, as well as 1 tablespoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon. I'm going to add it with the rest of the spices, even though it's already ground, and 2 teaspoons of cloves. The last thing is 5 to 10 black cardamom seeds, and I'm going to smash them and remove the seeds inside. Black cardamom has a smoky flavor, and while it is a really nice addition, I don't like too much of the smoky flavor, so I'm adding a little bit less than what the recipe calls for. I'm going to add all of those seeds to my grinder. This grinder is reserved just for grinding spices. You cannot go back and forth between using it for coffee and spices. And so now that I just use it for spices, it works really fast and efficiently rather than grinding them by hand. You can, of course, use a mortar and pestle and grind your spices by hand, and they will be a little bit more coarse than this. I'm going to add those black cardamom pods to my compost bin and then transfer the Afghan char masala into a jar because we made more than we need for this recipe since we're only using 3 cups of rice. We're going to use long grain basmati rice for this recipe. You can also find a parboiled rice as well. If you're using long grain parboiled rice, that works really well if you're going to do this recipe on the stove. We're going to be using an Instant Pot, and so I find that the regular basmati rice works just fine. I'm going to start by adding 3 cups directly into my Instant Pot, but we do want to rinse and soak the rice. You want to rinse it at least 3 times until the water starts to run a little bit more clear. Now, this is a practice I've been doing for many years, and it has its benefits. If you choose not to soak your rice or rinse it, you may need to use a little bit higher of a 1-to-1 ratio of water to rice. I'm going to put this into my Instant Pot, and then to this, I'm going to add 1 cup of broth. This is broth from another recipe that I've made, which is Afghan lamb shanks. So it's going to add so much additional flavor. Now, this is optional, but we do find that it is especially delicious when we're able to add a little bit of bone broth to our rice recipes. I'm adding 4 teaspoons of the Afghan char masala, as well as a 1/2 cup of Afghan raisins. Now, you can also mix the raisins in a 1-to-1 ratio and add some of the golden raisins as well. But whatever raisins you do, you may want to consider removing the stems if your raisins have any. I only find a few raisins that have the stems, but if you ever bite into them, it's so unpleasant that I just go through my raisins first and remove the stems before adding it to our rice. You may also prepare the raisins and carrots on the stovetop with a bit of olive oil. It tastes so delicious, and I'll show you how to do that at the end. I'm adding 8 ounces of shredded carrots, as well as a generous teaspoon of salt and about a tablespoon of olive oil. The olive oil is optional, but it does add a beautiful flavor. Since we're making this in the Instant Pot, I am going to use the rice function. It's about 12 minutes for 3 cups of rice. It is longer if you do more rice. And once it's done, we want to do the quick release. I'm adding a towel so that the steam doesn't get into my cabinets. You want to fluff your rice as soon as it's done cooking. Don't leave it in the Instant Pot or it will overcook. So I'm going to fluff it. And also, here's another tip. I never cook more than 3 or 4 cups of rice at a time in the Instant Pot. And this is also to prevent the rice from getting too soft during the cooking process. I am going to transfer it onto a serving platter, but if I left it in the Instant Pot on the keep warm function, I would fluff it first and add a little bit of water to keep it from drying out. Now, if I'm going to make the carrots and the raisins on the stove top, I'm going to cook the raisins after the carrots are completely done. So as soon as you get them as soft as you want, which we like a little bit more of an al dente, then you can add the raisins. Otherwise, the raisins will get burned. I add a little bit of olive oil as well as the Afghan char masala. It adds a nice flavor to the toppings. And in this case, I added golden raisins as well as regular raisins. And when you do the toppings separately, you can add as much toppings as you'd like. I hope that you'll try out the Afghan lamb shanks as well. The recipe is in the description box below. When you make the lamb shanks, you will end up with the broth, which I use for the rice. Another bonus is that in addition to adding that beautiful flavor, it also colors the rice. You can add a little bit of the broth over top your lamb shanks and on the rice to add a little bit more flavor and moisture. I hope that you enjoyed this recipe. Do check out the blog post that accompanies this video where you can find more information, the recipe, as well as other video tutorials in this series. You can find the link to that blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see what we're cooking on a daily basis, you can find me on my website at pepperandpine.com.